Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Man podcast. My name is Rory Paquette. I am, as always, your very grateful host. Folks, you have showed up so crazy for us in the last several months, especially. But and I always say this to you guys, so I'm going to change it up a little bit today. Today, I've been thinking not just about the last few months, but I've been thinking about the last 5 years. And when we first came out, we had a lot of you folks who joined us who are still with us today who said, this is a little strange. And people are saying it's toxic. And people are saying, well, masculinity is bad. And you stuck with us anyway. And 5 years later, you're still here. And you're still in our private groups. And you're still sharing and subscribing and sending me DMs. I got a DM from somebody the other day who listened to our first episode and has been with us ever since. And Sam, you know who you are, brother. Okay. And I really appreciate that. But folks, you've been with us since the beginning. You're here with us today. And I hope that you're going to be with us tomorrow and into the future because we are going to continue to bring you awesome content from awesome people like we have on today. And I'm going to keep working my butt off to make sure that I give you a good product in return. So you're out there doing what you're doing. You let me do what I'm doing. And I'm eternally grateful for that. Now that I've done all that, you guys all know what time it is. It is time to pay some bills. So let me go ahead and take a sip of my preferred beverage. Need one more of those. This is good. Mm-hmm. And if you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, you guys all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go look them up. Check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean bean. It is a fantastic cup of joe. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which is why we support them the way that we do. You all know how important veterans are here at the Power Man. Freedom Hill Coffee. Go check them out at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Now, if I'm going to keep up with this young guy in front of me, I better go ahead and get a few more sips of this caffeine. Hold on. All right, and we'll be drinking that throughout the show so that I can stay young. So here we go. Today, we have a very special guest, and I mean, the lead in is awesome. So pay attention, get your pencil out, write this stuff down. First of all, this gentleman's the host of a podcast called Healthy Christian Podcast. He's written 3 books and a whole bunch of ebooks. Purpose on the Path, Past to Purpose, and his most recent one, Hidden Fruit. Receive all that God has to offer. He's a husband, he's a dad, he's a pastor, he is an author, he's a podcaster, and he's a speaker. All right, so this guy's busy, and he still found time to come on here and talk to you folks. So I hope you listen. Please welcome to the show, Pastor Robert Bass. Pastor, how you doing, sir?
Great. Excited to be on here and to share and looking forward to the conversation.
That's awesome. Me too. Me too. Well, before we get rolling with all these projects that you have going, tell all my listeners who is Pastor Robert Bass. And what brings you here today.
Yeah, I wasn't born as a pastor. So I was a tennis athlete growing up all through since I was 5 years old to high school. Ended up going to college to work on cars for a living. So I worked for Mercedes for 8 years and was master certified there. And then ended up getting into a motorcycle accident and changed my life and started being a personal trainer, helping people get healthy physically, which actually led into teaching health classes in a church, which led into becoming a pastor. So God's got a wild ride for us. We just got to hang on sometimes.
Wow, I had no idea, and you just laid all that on me in like 10 seconds. That's fantastic. No, I mean, that's certainly the path well traveled. At what point did you start thinking, man, I'd like to be a pastor?
Wow. I'll let you know when that happens. I don't, I don't think, honestly, I've just been following the doors that God has opened in my life. After that motorcycle accident, before that, I really wasn't following the Lord and I was doing things my way. And the accident really turned my life around. And I said, you know what, God, I'm going to do this your way. I'm going to do the way you say in the Bible. Done it my way. Now it's yours. And that's been my kind of motto ever since. It's like, all right, whatever you want me to do, here I am. And that's just led me into ministry and books and speaking and even being on this podcast, which I'm grateful for.
Wow, I appreciate it. We're grateful to have you here. Um, let me ask you this: when you were, younger, were you exposed to, religion or to God's word when you were younger, and then you strayed away from it, or was it just never part of your life in the beginning?
Yeah, great question. I was raised in church, raised Baptist, and so luckily for me, I knew where to turn when, that accident happened and my life kind of came crumbling down. So that was helpful, right? And a lot of times people don't know where to turn. Life is just horrible and hard many times, and it seems hopeless. But for me, it's like, okay, I knew. I knew where I needed to turn. I just, like many of us, wasn't doing it and wasn't walking the path that I knew I probably should have.
That had to be helpful because you knew there was a path to turn to. So many people, when they're in that area, they never have been exposed to it, so it's new to them, and they're not really sure what it was. But that had to help a little bit, knowing that you had that there.
Yeah, it does. And even though for me, my life changed a lot when I went to college. Unfortunately, like many, um, I just I knew I had an experience, right? Because being raised in church. But one of the things I learned, the difference is you can know a lot about God, but then there's the relationship side. And that for me was the disconnect. It's like, well, yeah, being raised in church, you study the Bible, you know about God, you know what you should be doing. But for the first time when I had this motorcycle accident, my bills were piling up. All of these things were happening. This was before DoorDash and Uber and all of these things. Like I needed food. I needed the simple things in life. And by me turning and going to church, I'll never forget. I walked into church and I was on crutches. I was wrapped up with bandages from the accident. And this guy sitting on the front row came all the way from the front and sat with me in the back the entire service. And he just asked me one simple question: how can I help? I was like, well, I need some food. Like bills are just piling up, and my parents were helping me the best that they could, but I needed a lot of help. And for the first time in my life, I experienced what the love of God looked like. I knew about the love of God. I read about it in scriptures in the Bible, and people told me about it. But for the first time, when a stranger comes and helps you and has no obligation to do that, but because they're driven by the love of God, that changed my life. To actually experience what love looks like, that was impactful.
Now that's an incredible story the way it comes together. I'm curious, if you think back to that day, what was it that made you go visit a church that day?
I probably just felt hopeless, with bills piling up. My parents were helping me, but as a young at the time, as in my 20s, for your parents to have to come and help you again, it's kind of like, that's disappointing. You've
Sure.
tried it, you ventured out, you were successful, everything was working good, and then now your parents are having to support you again. And so for me, it's like, no, this is not what I want. Like, I need help. I've got to figure out how to get back on my feet. And so by going to church and trying to be around a better community of people than I was associated with, that was probably a big driving motivation for me, because it's like, well, I know what I was doing wasn't working. So I need a new
Right.
group. I need a new circle. And I'll never forget that man left his family on the front row. He doesn't look like me, doesn't have the same skin color as me, doesn't have the same background as me. A guy who just didn't even know me left what was probably comfortable for him
Yeah.
and to come and sit next to and help somebody that he didn't even have to do that. It was impactful in my life for sure.
I can imagine. I can imagine. That's quite a moment. How do you get from there? From feeling hopeless, someone reaches out. They say, "How can I help?" How do you get from there to leading that group, to being the pastor, to being the leader of the congregation that's sitting there wanting to help other people?
Yeah, great question. That's about a span of probably 8 years
Is it? Oh,
that
wow. Okay.
flies by. I was living in Destin, Florida at the time. Beautiful beaches in Destin, and I was going to that church, and I was working for Mercedes at the time, fixing cars. And because I went through this accident and I had to go to physical therapy and healing and training to learn to walk again, I was amazed at what your body could do. I was just like, this is wild how God has designed our body to even heal. Like, it's just our body's so complex and amazing. And so I was like, I want to know more. So I started going to school to learn, to educate myself. And then I just started helping other people, which led me into personal training. And I started teaching health classes at my church. And I'll never forget, the pastor showed up to my health class. So being a young 20-year-old, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh man, the pastor's here. I better say and do the right thing. But I saw how even his life started to improve. Like, he started to get healthier and more energy and motivation, and his family's getting healthier. I'm like, man, I'm onto something here. And the success of the business and the success of in ministry, just helping other people, kind of began to merge the two. At first, I didn't realize that I could help people physically and spiritually. I know now they're connected because we are a physical body and a spirit. And so they have a beautiful connection together that the pastor helped me realize. And then I ended up moving from Destin to Jacksonville, where I'm at now, and getting connected to this church and even growing the ministry and opportunity even more is what led me into pastoring.
Wow. So as we sit here today, is that your full-time profession today?
Yep, full-time
Being a pastor?
pastor. I feel like all the roles you mentioned earlier, full-time. Author, speaker, yeah, it keeps me busy. But I'm blessed and thankful that that God's allowed me to do all these things, and none of them were my plans, which is probably where I find a lot of my joy, is in the fact that it's like, well, this isn't me. This isn't Robert trying to make all these things happen. It's just I'm enjoying the ride. It's like, all right, Lord, what are we doing now? What are we doing this year? Here we go. God, what doors are you going to open? A couple weeks ago, I got to go to Israel. And it's just amazing, the door that God opened in Israel, because they're in the middle of a war. But yet the opportunities that he gave me to travel there and to even share my book there, it's just amazing, the doors that God will open when you just say, here I am.
Nice. You mentioned the book again. Let's give the book a little bit of due here. Now that we've heard a little bit about you and your story, you have three of them. So, which book was first? Give me a little snippet about what was it about, that type of thing, and maybe where it came from.
Yeah, the book Past to Purpose was my first one. And that came about when I was getting connected to a church, the pastor and mentor, he was really like, hey, Robert, you've been through a lot, like this motorcycle accident. And a lot of people don't come out of that. They usually fall into either drug addiction, because I was on pain medicine during that time, or they don't go to church and they go down other paths, or just kind of return to their old lifestyle. So he's like, I think you should write about your testimony and what God's done. And so that book is really just different stories of my life and how God used them. And so it's kind of like me looking back at my life, even though I was in my 20s, looking back those 20 years and just seeing how God was moving, even in high school, right? As a young person, like kind of acknowledging that, wow, God was moving in my life and I didn't even know it. And then the second book is Purpose on the Path. And so it's like, okay, now that we've looked back and saw God, well, how do we see him now? What does that look like to walk through our life and journey now and see that, hey, God's with me and that he's helping me walk this out?
Okay. And the most recent one then is the third book.
Yep. Most recent one is Hidden Fruit. And that one kind of went a completely different direction, where I really started to see a lot of people who say that they're Christians or followers of Jesus not experiencing joy and peace and the fruit that God actually promised us that we can have. And I don't know about you, but when God promises something, I want to know and I want to have it. If God says I can have something, all right, I'm going to live with that way, because there's not a lot of promises in the Bible. You begin to see the people in the Bible went through some pretty hard things.
Yeah.
But God promises that he will be with us. And because he is with us, it's a byproduct of his presence, which is love and joy and peace. And so the book was just like, hey, how do we live it? If God says peace is available, then how do I have peace and I wrote it kind of during COVID. And so it's like the world's falling apart. There's no peace. There's no toilet paper. What do we do? But yet God says that it's available. And so how do we wrestle with the world around us, but yet press into God's promises?
Right, right. Okay, I like that. So those are the three books. You started the podcast 5 years ago. So that was before the last book. Tell me the chronology of book podcast. What came out when?
Yeah, the podcast that I have now, Healthy Christian Podcast, started, I believe, about a year ago. Me and my wife started a podcast about 5 years ago. Is probably the one you're referring to. But the recent podcast, the Healthy Christian Podcast, is I really just started it because there was a lot of conversations that I know needed to be had when how do we live healthy as Christians? And there's a dynamic to our life where, okay, I need to be healthy physically. God's given me a body, and I want this body to perform the best that it can, right? But yet, sometimes I don't feel like taking care of my body, which is the mind, will, and emotion standpoint of who we are and how God created us to be. That affects who we are, and we're also a spirit. So much like God, we're a triune being, and we have to wrestle with that. Is when I'm physically tired, I don't want to pray. But yet when I pray, it renews my flesh. So it's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful conversation to have on how do we balance that and live the best healthy life that God could have for us. A lot of conversation to be had around that. So that's why I started the podcast.
Interesting. You're really pulling out all the stops here. You're a speaker also. So what is it is there a particular thing you speak on, or do you speak on whatever the topic needs to be kind of for the audience? How does that work? And what are you doing with that?
Yeah. Usually my speaking recently has been around my book just because I'm so passionate about people living the best life that God has for them. And so just really trying to encourage people. I care so much about this. I've been giving the book away for free because I'm like, look, if we can just get this, our life is going to be so much better. I'm like, look, let's remove all obstacles, all excuses. And so just being able to travel and again, just letting God open the door to be at different places. Here in a few months, I'll be in DC. And so again, just opportunity opened up in Israel recently, and just really thankful for that message that God's allowed me to share. And even in the book is one of the unique parts of the book is before each of the chapters, there's this small letter. And when I got done with the book, I finished writing it and I felt incomplete. So anybody that's listening that's a writer understands, you know when you're done, you know when the message you've got is ready to be published. But I just felt like it was incomplete. And so I sat on it for a little while. And then one night I woke up, middle of the night, and just started writing more. And what came out was these letters that's from a father to their son expressing the fruit. So love, joy, peace. So if you take my experience that I went through, right, with the motorcycle accident, I grew up knowing about love. But yet when that father, when that man came and showed me what love looks like to help me get food, to get back on my feet, to pick me up and take me to physical therapy, I got to experience love. And so in the book, there's a letter before each chapter helping us know what it looks like to experience love, to experience joy, like the heart of a father, the heart of God for us. And so these letters kind of make it really personal instead of it just being head knowledge.
Interesting. So the letter that you're referring to, you're the one writing this letter. You didn't get these from somewhere else. You constructed the
correct,
letter, right?
yeah.
So the voice of the letter, is this you as a father, or is this you as a son, having heard this from a father or wishing you had heard this from a father?
Yeah, that's great. It's actually all the above.
Oh, wow.
I wrote it from just such a different perspective. It's like, man, there's been times in my life where like I've felt like God has spoken those things over me. So some of those are in the letters. And there's some of them that are like, man, I wish I would have heard this, from my dad.
Yeah.
And there's been things where I've wrote the letter in a way where it's like, hey, I need to be speaking this over my son, and I need to be telling him these kind of things, even though it may be hard for me as a dad to say some things sometimes. The letter allowed me to like get some things out that I wanted to say or wish I could say to him. So they're kind of
Wow.
all the above, kind of flowed out. But that's what I enjoy about the feedback I've gotten about the book is when you read it, you're going to read it and receive it in the way that you need it. And that could be different for every single person.
I love it when I have a chance to read the book before the interview. And so I do want to apologize for that. My schedule simply didn't allow it, but I really am looking forward to reading this one. Everything that you've told me in the pre-interview and everything since then, I'm like, I really need to read this book. But the part about the letters, it really feels like it's hitting me personally right at this moment. So I'm kind of going, I'm a father of three who didn't have a father worth a darn. And so everything that I do is that way. And I think maybe that's what made me ask you that question. But I'm constantly, what did I wish I got from my dad and trying to make sure I'm giving that to my children. So that's like, front of mind awareness for me personally. But,
Yeah.
I work with men every day in our private groups and things like that. And fathers connecting with their children, and in particular, fathers connecting with their sons, has been such a big issue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and what I've seen in the last 5 years is more and more and more fathers want to find a way to get to that. It's not like, the older days, the great generation, coming out of the Great Depression and, World War II and stuff. This is, a new age of fathers who are still Gen X, type age, but we don't want to be like our fathers were. And so we're constantly looking for a good way. It seems like you're almost giving them a little bit of a roadmap, maybe a way to get started, especially. Is that a little accurate, especially since I haven't read the book? I'm
Yeah.
reaching a little bit here. So,
You're spot on. At the end of the book, I actually give uh, dads or fathers an opportunity to write a letter to their child, whether
oh,
it be a
wow.
son or daughter. Um, and what I love about the letter is it brings us a lot of healing just in reading some of the words we wish we would have heard. And what I love about it, and this is what I love about how God works, is whether our dads were perfect or whether they just completely missed the mark, they're not perfect, right? No dad. We're all humans. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do things we wish we wouldn't have done. And what this does is it kind of allows us to take a moment as dads to say, you know what? There could be something that I'm doing as a dad or a father that has been affected by the way that I was raised or not raised. And a lot of times, sometimes we do things as dads because we want to do the opposite of our dad. But that may not always be good, right? There
Right.
could be really good things that our father did, but that we're avoiding because they did a few things that were traumatic to us. So we've just thrown everything out. It's like, no, I don't want to be nothing like them. But that's not fair either. And so I think this book allows us to open up some opportunities and at least to say, you know what, I may not be able to say this or do this like I would like, but you know what, I could write this down. I could start there. I could at least write down my hopes and what I desire, and it gives you a step to begin to work towards that.
Nice. Nice. I love that you put so much of yourself into the book too. It's when it's personal like that, and it's authentic and it's credible. It's not just somebody talking about a theory. So
Yep.
I think that brings a lot more to it. So congratulations to you on that because I think it's important. But let me ask you, with all the work you've done, because you've put a lot of thought into the relationship of fathers and sons and things like this. Um, from where you sit, with all of your experiences, the path that you've been down, and you've experienced a lot of different things. It hasn't been, homogenous, from A to B. So, with all that, with writing the books, with the experiences you've had, um, how do you see the role of today's father, in the family, in terms of, responsibility and what they should be doing, these types of things. How do you view that?
Yeah, I think it's important for us as men and dads to have a voice and to be okay about the convictions that we have. And I feel like right now what a lot of our world is walking through is it's like, well, it's not okay to feel that way. It's not okay to have a conviction or something you feel strong about. You got to include everybody, or you shouldn't be speaking out in that way. And I think that what that's caused, it's caused a lot of men to just be like, all right, you know what? I don't have the energy or the time to deal with that. Just look, I don't want to be a part of drama. And so I'm going to avoid drama. And so I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to worry about that. It's like, okay, if you want to go and do crazy stuff, I'm going to let you go off and do crazy stuff. And so I think it's caused a lot of us, and I'll admit to this at first, is it caused us to just not speak, to not be confident about our convictions in the way that we feel like we should be leading our family in good, healthy ways. And so one of my friends, what they do in their family is they have like a mission statement for their family. And they say, you know what? This is who we are as this family. And these are the values that we are going to live by. And they talk about it. When things don't line up according to those values and that mission statement, they're like, hey, no, this is who we are. And what you're doing doesn't line up with who we are and who we desire to be. And so that needs to change. That needs a shift. We need to be doing this. We need to be doing that. And so I think there's a lot of power in, hey, you know what? This is my conviction. This is the way I feel like things should be going. This is what I feel like is good. This is how our family's going to make a difference in this world, and standing by that and being willing to speak out. And every parent out there knows your kid is going to compare you to every other parent and say, well, Johnny's friends get to do this. You know what? That's fine. We ain't Johnny, and that we ain't them. This is who we are
Right.
as a family. And these are the values we are going to stand by in spite of what other families are doing. I don't control them. That's what I tell my son. I don't control them. God hasn't put me in trust of those kids, but this is what we're going to do. And just be okay with that and have that confidence.
Nice. I love the answer all the way around. Um, that was a great answer. Let me ask you this then. A lot of the guys that I work with, they have a religious upbringing of some kind, whatever it was. A lot of them are Catholic, just happen to be. But most of them have a Christian background in some capacity. And most of them have strayed away from it in some way. And much like you told your story, where you had the upbringing, but then you kind of strayed, and walked away from it a little bit. If you have a motorcycle accident, if you have a life-threatening surgery like I had, which my viewers have all heard about, then you have an impetus to, when you come face to face with your own mortality, to recognize the mistakes you've made. But to help the guys out that, hey, I don't want you to have to go through a near-death experience in order to find a better path. How do you, what do you say to men who want to reintroduce God and His Word into their lives, but maybe for the first time, introduce it to their family? Because, if they stepped away, then they may not be raising their family that way. They want to now, but some of them have actually said to me, it's too late. It's too late. I can't bring it up now, or I'm going to look like a hypocrite, or I'm going to look like, this, or it's going to be too tough. Do you know what I'm saying? How do
Yeah.
you reintroduce that for yourself and introduce it to your family?
Yeah. Easy first answer is people follow when you're authentic, and you can't fake a relationship with God. You can't fake really anything in your family because they're going to eventually read through you. And so even if you have values, you have to stick to those values. And so if you feel like your values are changing and they're not producing the life that you desire or the best life you feel like is possible, well, that's okay. And say, you know what? We've been on this path. I've been on this path. And I don't feel like this path has taken us to the best possible destination. So we're going to pivot a little bit. But they have to see that you're true to that, and that you are bought in, you know? It's kind of like a parent that tells their kid, you should go to church, but then they don't. Or you should eat healthy, but they don't. Well, those are empty words. And that's not where the power is, when we actually walk things out and we live true. And so I just tell people, just make a step and see what happens. See how your family responds. See how you respond. A lot of guys have been shocked that when they start changing, you don't even have to tell your family. They just start doing it too. That's what's amazing about leadership, and amazing about the influence that a man or any individual can have. Is, I think, the greatest influence or the greatest compliment as a leader is when people begin to follow you and you're not telling them to follow you. You're just doing it. And they're like, wow, I see the difference in his life. The greatest testimony as a Christian is that we live with joy in unjoyful times. Well, I'm not just going to go around telling people you should be joyful, right? Yeah. No, it's that I live with the joy, right? As a pastor and a leader, if I don't experience that joy, but I'm telling other people that you should be doing it, well, that's just going to fall on deaf ears. No one's going to believe me. So I have to be living and walking that out too. And so I would say free yourself from making your family follow you at first, and you do it. If you feel like there's going to be something good for your family or good for your life that's going to help you, then do it, and see where it goes.
Love that answer. I just had a conversation with somebody. I did the same exact thing. He said to me, Rory, I really feel like I need to get myself straight. I need to get my relationship with God straight. I'm going to let my family know that, hey, I'm going back to church. You're welcome to come with me, but this is what I'm doing, because I need to get my relationship straight with God. And he said, when I feel like that's straight, then I'm going to bring them in, and I'm going to be able to say, hey, I am now straight with God. I want you guys to come in and meet him, type of thing. It sounds like you're advocating for that a little bit, like get yourself straight first.
When I do marriage counseling, this is the number one thing I tell every single couple. I say, you have to be the best version of yourself. Because what's the first thing we do when we go into any kind of counseling? Oh, it's their fault. I want them to change, right? Well, if they changed, I would be better. That's just the summary of every marriage counseling, by the way. And so what I tell people from the very beginning, look, we're not going to blame other people. The best thing you can do for your marriage is to be the best version of yourself. Because I believe that a healthy marriage is 100-100. What I mean by that is I'm meant to give 100% of myself to my spouse in order to bring her up, to lift her up. And then my spouse gives 100% of herself to lift me up. And then we're both lifted up and we have a healthy relationship. It's not 50-50. The 50-50 thing doesn't work. And so, but the greatest thing I can give to my wife is a healthy version of me. So what that looks like in my life, I shared with you how I grew up playing tennis. I love tennis. My wife knows I'm a better version of myself when once a week I can go out and play tennis and just decompress, go out, get exercise, get away, disconnect. That produces a better version of Robert. And so my wife knows, okay, if he tells me he needs to get away for a little bit and go play, I know I'm going to get a good version back. So my wife's like, I'm going to sacrifice some time that he would normally be with the family or normally be home because he's going to go out and play. I don't abuse that, but you see where I'm going there. It's like, I've got to be the best version of myself in order for me to be the best version for my family.
Yeah, love that. I didn't realize that you did marriage counseling, so I'm going to have to revise this whole header now in addition to...
Yeah, another one.
Right. Now, is the marriage counseling part of the pastorship?
Yeah, it is for sure. I think being a pastor, you wear about 1 billion hats. And so, you do weddings, you do funerals, you do everything in between. Right. And so that's the honor that I have. And not that I have it all figured out. I've learned the biggest thing is just knowing that we walk through life with other people and that we've got people in our corner to help us figure it out. even
Sure.
though they may not have the answer.
So you're doing marriage counseling, you're doing, pastoring, you're doing speaking. You've written the three books. You've got the podcast. Do they all have a separate purpose, or is there a singular purpose that is driving all of them for you?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I ask myself that all the time. I'm like, God, what am I doing with all these different things? Should I be focused on one of them? So in my second book, I talk about what it really means to have a purpose. And a lot of times we think about a purpose in the form of a destination. It's like, when I reach this goal or when I achieve this status, then I've achieved my purpose. But I actually argue in that book that I feel like our purpose is through our relationship with God. Meaning, again, that like when I press into God, when I press into his best for my life, then I'm actually going to experience my purpose in every day that I'm doing. So I feel like I am doing my purpose right now in this podcast. But I also feel like I'm doing my purpose just as much when I preach on a platform or when I'm home with my family or everywhere that I could be in a grocery store and see somebody that has a need that can't pay for their groceries and I help pay for that. I'm doing my purpose. And so I really argue in that book that when we view our purpose as a destination or this task to be achieved, then we're always chasing it. It like never ends. It's just this constant cycle that we're always going to be working for the rest of our life to achieve this made up thing, when in the long run, I have complete peace that I'm doing it and sharing what I'm called to do now. And then when I get off this podcast, there could be something else that God would have me do. And so for me, there's a freedom that I live in, knowing that throughout my day, throughout my week or year, God, what is it what doors are you opening, and living in the freedom of that, instead of like, well, I haven't achieved this goal this year. And until I achieve this goal, I'm not really doing my purpose. Well, you know what? That's okay. Live in the freedom of that. And I think a lot of men that I've talked to resonate with it, because we view our families as, well, until my family's like this or until I'm like this, then I'm not a good Christian, or I'm not a good father, or I'm not a good leader. And until my life looks like this perfect picture that I have in my mind, then I'm not. But I don't see evidence of that in the Bible. Is God says, no, because of me, because of what I've done, you already are. Now live in that. Right? And so it's, I don't know, scripture always flips the way we view life and situations on its head.
True. I like that. That's very, very true. One thing that I run into with men is, especially right now with fathers again, we are we're constantly judging ourselves. We're constantly trying to, what you said a moment ago about, sort of succeed, in a way. We have to have, my family has to be at this point. We have to have this house. We have to have this car.
Mm-hmm.
We're judging ourselves, and success looks different for everybody, but it's an unattainable picture that we're constantly chasing. And if it's an attainable picture, then we're not aiming high enough. You know what I mean? We're lazy. And if it's unattainable, then we're just dreaming. We're not being realistic. We're men. Come on, what's going on
Yeah.
now? We can't really win. And so I have had a lot of conversations with men about, how do I ever feel successful? How do I ever celebrate? Like, hey, you know what? I finally got something right. What does success look like for, a father, husband to you?
Yeah. I think success looks like acknowledging that every single day we have a purpose. Every single day there's a
Yeah.
difference that we can make, and that may be completely different. I mean, it's, again, I think for me to judge what an ideal success looks like, I could limit myself. I'll just say it like that. Like I could drastically limit what God is able to do in my life and what I'm even able to do if I view success a certain way. And instead of like, you know what does today's success and purpose look like? I had a life coach really help me because I was kind of struggling with this question. And he says, Robert, have you ever done an ideal week before? And I said, no, I don't even know what an ideal week is. And, I was like, no, I just follow the Lord, that's my ideal week. And so he really helped me unpack like, well, what are you aiming for every single day? Like what does a perfect day look like? And I'd never done that. I'd never wrote that down, but that was so helpful for me because I really began to evaluate that I didn't even like what was in my mind for an ideal week or successful. It wasn't even lining up with my goals because it's so easily changed by my mood, how I was feeling, what other people were telling me success looked like. And so for me to write down on a piece of paper, you know what, this is what a successful week looks like to me. And every, I have it now every single hour. Every single hour is a different ideal. And that has just helped me though live in freedom. I don't live bound by that schedule. It's actually done the opposite for me. It's allowed me to live in freedom to say, you know what, this is my goal today. And as I begin to work through that, I see a lot about me and I challenge my values and my systems and the things that put forward. So that's been really helpful for me if anybody's never done that.
That's great. Uh, you've unpacked a lot today. I appreciate you fielding questions that you were not prepared for, and just being authentic and honest through all of it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And it's been a great conversation. So I want to go ahead and kind of throw it to you to wrap it up a little bit. First, I want to say you do have two websites that are out there. I'm going to make sure they're both in the show notes. One's going to take them to the book and your ebooks and things like that too, and then one's going to take them over to your website. About you speaking. They're both in Podmatch, so I'll make sure they're both there. As we kind of wrap things up here a little bit, I want to give the floor to you. And if there's anything that I didn't ask you in this awesome conversation we've had, if there's something we brought up and you want to make sure you're, sort of, bring it home, or if there's a nugget you want to leave behind, maybe a piece of advice, anything like that, all the above. The last couple minutes here are for you, sir. Wrap it up. Let us have it.
Thank you. I want to leave y'all with this scripture that I was thinking about in this conversation. And it's Proverbs 29:2. And it says, when the righteous increase, when the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. And so I think as men and as leaders, it's important for us to understand that like when we work on ourselves, when we develop who we are, when we allow ourselves to be the best version possible, then our families is going to rejoice. Then the people in our workplaces, then these other people, when we invest into ourselves, when we care enough about ourselves, that's going to reach our family and our friends and our other environments. And so many times we look external to fix our problems and we look to fix other people. But when we can really look internal and say, you know what do I need to be the best version of myself? Because as a leader, as someone who influences people, the people are going to rejoice when good people are in rule. And we know it. We see it in our world today. When there's leaders around us that don't do the right thing, it affects us. And so every single man, every single person has a realm of influence where you're going to be able to affect other people. And so I pray as other people are around you that they rejoice. And if they don't, that's okay. Work on yourself. God has more for your life than you can even know. And so if your audience wants to help, I'd love to get a free copy of my book to them. They can go to that website, hiddenfruitbook.com, and enter the code SAMPLE at checkout and get a free copy.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea that was coming. Sample is the code at checkout, and they get a free book. I will make sure that's in the show notes too. I hope everybody goes out and orders it. I hope this costs you a lot of money. So all these people can actually read this book. That'd be beautiful.
Absolutely.
But no, thank you for that offer. It's incredibly generous.
You're
Not
welcome.
what I was expecting at all. Had no idea. So
Well, like I said, I live true to my word. I want people to experience the best life that God has for them, and it's an honor. People have poured into my life and helped me through mentors, and just like the gentleman who left his seat to come help me,
yeah,
I believe we can be that for other people too.
great way to end. Great way to wrap it up for us too. So, all right. Husband, father, marriage counselor, pastor, author, podcaster, speaker, Pastor Robert Bass. Sir, thank you for being with us today and for sharing the way you have. It was awesome.
You're welcome. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Me too. Folks, this has been another awesome episode of the Power Man podcast. So much came out today. So much came out today that is relevant to so many of you guys out there. I literally heard the pastor talking about things that we have had conversations about, gentlemen. And when you have stuff like that hitting home, I hope you are listening to it because this is the type of thing that doesn't happen on accident. All right. You don't come to me saying, hey, this is bothering me. And then I say, hey, let's talk about it. And then this guest pops up out of nowhere. These are not things that happen on accident. All right. This is stuff that happens because God's trying to lead you down a particular path. He's trying to give you a notice. And at some point, we all have to wake up when we get the wake up call. So I hope you guys are listening. And the reason I hope you're listening is because you're worth it. You all have value and you're worth it. And your families are worth it. And at some point, gentlemen, you just have to believe it. Until next time.